I'm really honored to, sit down and interview you guys. Ever since talking with you the first time, I've learned a lot. I've learned that anybody could be one step away from, having some type of crisis or being in this position. And I encourage other people to not be prideful. Just reach out to see if you might qualify for some type of assistance. It doesn't have to get extremely bad. If you know someone who's in a position, reach out, and see how you could be helped, So. Welcome to the Pulse Project. Pandemics had an effect on everyone, whether it's physical health, mental health, effects of being isolated, financial stress, and more. This project's designed to show you the resources you have available to help you move forward during these tough times. Welcome to the Pulse Project. It's been brought to you by Bank, Community Development Partnership, and Witted Media. Welcome to the Pulse Project, where it's my job to let lower to moderately income residents in Beaver County know what resources they have available to them. Today, I'm sitting down with Cornerstone to discuss Beaver County and homelessness and how we can change things and what the work you guys are doing. So if you guys could introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. I'm Dina Cibatoni, and my title is the Continuum of Care Coordinator for Beaver County. And the Continuum of Care is the network of partners that work together towards the goal of ending homelessness in the county. Ending homelessness doesn't mean that there will never be a homeless person again, but just that when it happens, it's a rare occasion, it's brief, and it's not recurring. So we have a network of over 200 partners who work together in various ways to support folks who are homeless and to get them rehoused and stable.
Okay. So with there being 200, is there a one-stop shop where people can go to find all of these resources in one place? That's what we're trying to do with this project, but is there already a place?
Pretty much, it's the Cornerstone.
Okay, so you guys are that. All right.
Right. Well, I'm Marie Timpano. I'm the executive director of the Cornerstone of Beaver County. Thank you, Seth, for hosting this podcast and for including the Cornerstone and the Continuum in the process today. So Dina sort of is the broad oversight over the coordinator over the system, the Continuum of Care for homelessness and housing issues in Beaver County. The Cornerstone of Beaver County was established in 2016 as that sort of one-stop shop, and it certainly has evolved over the years, 5 or 6 years since its inception. Essentially, the Cornerstone has become for individuals who are literally street homeless, and that's under HUD's definition, Housing and Urban Development. I preface that, I state that because their definition is a little different than what we may talk about what homelessness looks like in Beaver County, more so than in other cities across this country. With that said, HUD's definition is living on the street, living in a shelter, in a place not meant for human habitability, or in a hotel or motel paid for by someone other than yourself, is literally homeless. A few years back, HUD developed sort of a screening tool. It's like going to the ER and seeing the triage nurse, where you would come in. It's called coordinated entry. Essentially what happens is you go through that screening tool. It sort of scores different challenges that you may be having in your life, how long you've been homeless, if you have chronic health conditions, if you have children, if you're employed, if you have mental health or substance use challenges, etc. And it sort of scores you along that tool and determines what level of support, like in the ER, what level of care might you need. Some of those programs that you may score for are under the direction of the Cornerstone of Beaver County. Others are not, but they are within the Continuum of Care. So essentially it's the gateway to literally homeless services coming in, and the Cornerstone is the one place where that happens. Now, when you come in that door, we're going to make sure that you have a place to be for the night. We're going to make sure that you have all the necessities, food, basic needs, etc., hygiene types of things. We're going to stabilize you for the time being, determine what program you're going to be scored for, and at that point you can go right into that program, or there may be a wait. Housing, it's not overnight. You're not going to come in the door, unfortunately. We're not going to be able to put you in an apartment tomorrow. We'll talk more about the situation with housing in Beaver County as we go through this morning's conversation. Other programs and services available are prevention services for individuals who are not meeting that HUD definition. So they may be behind on their rent, they've been to a magistrate, the landlord's giving them a letter. So there are other programs and services under the roof of the Cornerstone. We have the Franklin Center of Beaver County, whose main offices are in Aliquippa, but they have a field site here. They help with prevention. We have the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. They're helping with SNAP benefits, food stamp benefits, and food insecurity. They can direct you to get you food boxes, direct you to pantries, etc. We have utility assistance. Again, a lot of folks who may be having, that's all part of securing your housing, right? You have to have electric, you have to have gas. So we have the Holy Family Institute's Duquesne Light CAP program here. They do emergency assistance and CAP programming. And the Cornerstone operates Columbia Gas CAP. We can direct you to water assistance. Duquesne Light, Holy Family Institute is now doing People's Gas assistance as well. And then we have veteran programming. We have hotel and motel assistance, which we refer to as atypical shelter. In Beaver County, we have the Women's Center of Beaver County, whose primary focus is on domestic violence, women and families experiencing domestic violence, and men. And so we don't have a men's shelter currently, but the Cornerstone is currently rehabbing a 24-hour men's shelter that will open in the fall of this year. Other supports, as I mentioned, veteran support, assisting with rent, assisting with transportation, assisting with utilities, any myriad of things that an individual in crisis may come in needing. If we can't provide it, we're going to try, as a partner in the continuum of care, we're going to try to connect you to those resources. But again, this organization was established to help so that people don't have to go in 20 doors to try to figure it out. Because if you're already stressed and in crisis, we don't want to stress you and put you further into crisis.
And through that coordinated entry process, the other partners meet once a month to look at who has come through, which program, what did they score for, and then they coordinate their services accordingly as well. While that person is in shelter and waiting to get into one of those longer-term programs, the Cornerstone and our other partners are referring out. So we're referring to our mental health partners, to our case management partners, to the drug and alcohol partners. Whatever that person needs, we're using that time until they get into an apartment to help get them connected to the supports that they need. Again, food, security, resources, utility assistance, all of that stuff. Also at the Cornerstone, I just wanted to point out, you have the rental assistance programs for SOAR.
We do. I was going to mention that too. So
good.
we have. So this is a very. As we get into this a little more, it's very complex, right? And so with those complexities in mind, the Cornerstone is housing, but we rely heavily on our partners, mental health, substance use, etc. So the Cornerstone partners formally with Beaver County Behavioral Health and Drug and Alcohol for what we call our SOAR programs, state opioid response for individuals who have a substance use disorder that includes opioids, etc. We also have a relationship, a formal contract with Children and Youth Services. So individuals who are going through that system and that process who have children and maybe in that system, we have a housing coordinator dedicated to assisting those individuals. We also have a formal relationship with the Area Agency on Aging. We do see older adults over the age of 55, 60, many of whom are veterans who find themselves in a housing crisis. And so those organizations look to the Cornerstone and the Continuum of Care to provide those supports to their population, specifically related to housing.
This is great. Like I'm really loving what I'm hearing. Like the work that you guys are doing. It's like you don't have to be completely flat on your face to get some help. Like we're almost trying to help you not become homeless.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we know that when somebody does touch the homeless system, the HUD homeless definition system, they're more likely to come back into homelessness at some point in their lifetime. So these prevention resources that Marie mentioned, and even just getting people supported through other services and things like that to help them not have to enter that system, we will do everything we can to keep them out of that system. We've had people come through coordinated entry who meet the HUD definition of homelessness, but given their circumstances, they have a little bit of income, they're able to maybe apply to the housing authority. So we'll circumvent the homeless system and get them into if they want it. We always work with folks to give them choice. But if they want that, then we'll work with them to try to get them into the housing authority. Then they've never touched the homeless system, and they're more likely to remain stable and not have to return to homelessness by taking that route. So.
And if we can keep you housed, that's the best answer. I mean, obviously, we don't want to destabilize you in any way, shape, or form. So for some people, it's a small bit of a boost, and for others, it may be a little bit more, but we're here to meet you where you are. You're not alone. We're here for you. I know we're going to talk about COVID and the impact that had on our community, a huge impact, continues to have an impact to this moment. But a lot of good came out of that as well, out of that adversity and challenge that this world, this country, and our community suffered. Great options and great resources and collaboration came out of it.
Okay. Before we move on to COVID, selfishly, I want to understand, how are you guys able to get everybody kind of on the same page? Because I heard a lot from aging to a number of different organizations. How long did that take? Was that before you guys' time?
Well, one of the ways that that we do that is through a monthly partner meeting that we have, and that was started in 2007 or 8. Okay. And that was about the time that HUD said communities have to have a continuum of care to receive this funding. And so our predecessors worked hard to bring people to that table initially. And all these years later, we still meet monthly. We usually have about 40 people in attendance. We just started doing a hybrid meeting, so we're in person, but also doing Zoom, and I think we had the most people ever that way. I think we were well into 60 people at that meeting. So that's one of the ways we do it, so we can get information out that way in that meeting, but we also get input. So the way that we structure that meeting, the first half of that meeting, I just turn it over to everybody in that meeting to say, what's going on? What are your updates? What are the challenges? And we work through it that way. And 9 times out of 10, if someone presents a problem, it's amazing. By the end of the meeting, somebody has a solution, at least a suggestion, if nothing else. So I think a lot of good work gets done there. It's also an opportunity to sort of build and maintain those relationships, because it's so much easier to refer to an agency if you know that person. And so I think that meeting helps cement some of those relationships as well. That just makes it smoother for partnering.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say that I came to the Cornerstone in 2017, and, we have great providers out there, but, housing was sort of a little bit sitting over here. People would refer, but when I talk about relationships, it's not just like, I'm going to send you over to organization B. We're going to have a situation like Dina's describing, where you're going to pick up the phone, you're going to call Seth, and you're going to say, Seth, I got, Mary or Joe here, and this is the situation. So over the years, we were able to get to that table in a meaningful way, become a part of those entities, almost like in a care team kind of environment.
Right, because I thought you guys were apart. When I spoke with you both, I'm like, they're together.
Well, we are together in a different, but we may be under different payroll systems or different entities, umbrellas, but we are all in this together. And so, again, we have our expertise, which is housing and housing-related services, but we sit at the table with our behavioral and substance use partners, our mental health partners, our transportation partners, our healthcare system, all of those providers, our aging system, our veteran systems, and not only service providers, but other types of providers as well, because business people, all types of people are encountering individuals who may be in a crisis. We need the eyes and ears of the whole community. But over the years, we've been able to continue to get to that table. We chair a lot of committees together, and we sit together, and we have meaningful, real relationships. And that really takes time to build that trust, to have that integrity between organizations, to figure out how to weave in and out of the languages of different organizations with HIPAA and all privacy types of things. That's really a lot more challenging than it sounds. But the good news is we have leadership and staff and teams in this community that are not willing to allow those to be barriers. And so what we did was we just figured out how to talk to one another, how to make those systems more seamless, and to be a part of each other's teams. So we train together. We come together to the table to solve problems either virtually or in person. And when we're referring or we're discussing a case or a situation with another organization, we're doing it as part of a comprehensive team that's surrounding that individual, clearly that individual driving the bus, because it's their life, right? I don't want to be told, do this or do that, or you should be here or you should be there. It's about what's important to you, how can we help you get there, and what is it really going to take? Our educational institutions, we can't say enough about them. Our job training institutions have come to the table. Hotels, motels, it really does take a village to solve the issues of a community and to have a healthy community. And so we're pleased to be a part of that.
That's great to hear, man. It really is. So we can discuss COVID now. As I was preparing for this interview, I seen that homelessness has increased 30% due to COVID. What are some of the challenges that you've seen because of COVID?
Do you want to start with the shelter in place?
Oh,
You
man, it started-
Explain that very well.
Yeah, it started back when this all started, two and a half years ago now, when we thought it might be a couple of weeks or something like that. And the governor ordered a shelter-in-place order. Well, imagine if you were homeless at that point in time and you were hearing, news of what was coming across this country and this world, and you were told to shelter in place and you had nowhere to shelter in place. So we, at that time, we did not have a men's shelter. The former Crossroads Men's Shelter, who sort of really were the pioneers in that effort in this county, had lost their location back in 2019, June of 2019, right before all this stuff sort of happened.
And we also partner with some out-of-county shelters for situations if we don't have a space for them here in the county. We had historically relied on out-of-county shelters. Well, when COVID hit, they didn't really want to take people from across county lines just for keeping distancing. They were taking less people into shelter
Especially
to
from
begin
here.
with.
Oh, yeah.
We had numbers.
We did
in
have
Beaver
some. We
County.
were overachieving sometimes. But with that said, we couldn't go out of county, even though for the most part our partners out there were extremely supportive and really did everything they could to help us. So we started to look at individuals. We were hearing from municipalities and mayors and police departments and healthcare systems for individuals who were out there and were scared. Some of whom may not have touched the system prior for whatever reason, but were frightened by this process, and so were shaken out a little bit, and came to us. Thanks to those individuals who had their eyes open and were looking out for one another. So then we started to look at certainly our women's shelter. We looked at hotel and motel funding because there was hotel and motel availability when COVID hit, and the Shell plant sort of sent workers home during that time. There was availability in hotels and motels who, in fact, reached out to us in the beginning and said, look, we'll work with you on this. And so that's what we were really able to do. We were working with the food bank to take food boxes and things to people. Looking at, that was before testing or any of it, so we established a relationship with one particular institution in the county that is a motel, so people could go in and come out single entry in case people needed to be in isolation because of infection or fear of infection. So those were all things and new language and new ways of working that taught us all a lot about what we do and how we do it and what things might be necessary as we prepare for the future that was pretty well unknown by that time. Those challenges became really, really tough financially because we had people, there was just nowhere for people to go. There was no movement going to happen. The shelter in place remained.
Well, and if I can interject,
Sure
the
thing.
other thing that was happening through the pandemic was the eviction moratorium. So people were staying in their homes because they could not be evicted, which was great, but then there was absolutely no turnover with units. And so we had lots of people in hotels waiting for an apartment to become available, and nothing was becoming available because everybody was staying in place because of the eviction moratorium. We were glad for that people were remaining housed through the pandemic, but it certainly made a challenge as far as getting these people who we now have in motels.
Right, and it showed us that, it showed us some of the challenges with the inventory in the county of safe and affordable housing. And so
Absolutely.
the cost was pretty exorbitant, and thanks to our community development program, our commissioners and others in the county, and HUD and other monies that were being pushed in both state and federally over this time frame that helped to support that. But I think at one point we were upwards of $90,000 to $100,000 a month in hotels because we just had tons of people in hotels.
And it was what we needed to do at that time.
Yes.
You can't snap your fingers and have a shelter. However, through the length of this pandemic, we have been able to use some of those funds that came into the county, through stimulus packages and the rescue plan, American Rescue Plan, and all of that, to now build a shelter, which should hopefully be open in the fall.
Will be open in the fall of this year, in November of this year. But again, as we went through COVID and we learned, about vaccinations and testing and all of those other things, the Continuum of Care and all of its member organizations and others in the community came together to ensure those services and that information and that availability of those supports were being made available to individuals who were in crisis on the streets, in hotels, otherwise. And then when our counterparts and our partners in other communities could accept our people, they certainly did, and we stayed in very close communication with those out-of-county partners, both in Lawrence County, with the City Rescue Mission, in Allegheny County, in Steubenville in Ohio, and in other communities across in sort of a tri-state area.
Yeah.
And our Women's Center, I can't say enough about the Women's Center, Darlene Thomas and her team. We were on the phone a lot, and we would sort of like a relay race, like I'll support this family for this one, then you pick them up, then we'll do this, and you do that. And so it very much looked like that. It was a lot of conversation. In a difficult time when people were working remotely and there was so much uncertainty, we were essential services, and so the providers, many of the providers in the Continuum, in one way or another, stayed active this entire time, including the Cornerstone of Beaver County.
Man, when a lot of people got to go home, work remote, and kind of have less work, you guys had more work.
We did.
In
In
a lot
fact,
of
we
ways,
did.
yeah.
It got busier.
Like, I never thought we'd be willing and dealing for, like, COVID tests, right? Because at some points, okay, we'll take them, but we need to know they have a negative test. Okay, so now we're scrambling to get COVID tests, meeting in back alleys, getting tests from here and there.
Bleach wipes, bleach wipes, hand sanitizer,
Yes.
masks, gloves, all of that PPE. I can still remember, God love her, Danielle Rumbaugh from Beaver County Behavioral
That's
Health.
where I got
like
my
driving
tests.
around in the back of her car. She would pull up in the parking lot. It was kind of funny, and she would open the back up, and she would have like bleach wipes and things like that. I mean, that's the way, in a very basic, on-the-ground response. It was funny, but it was really endearing,
Well,
and it
and
really
how
cemented
about
relationships.
all of the supplies we had at community
Oh, yeah.
development. They were so mad at me because I kept getting these supplies, but we really didn't have anywhere to put them, you know? Like, that's the other thing.
pretty
Where's
funny.
the space for the test, for the gloves, for the wipes, and all this and that? Well, it was the lobby of community development. And when it came time for the Christmas tree and there wasn't place for the Christmas tree, I'm like, I got to start moving some boxes.
I hear it, man. I hear it.
But, you know, just switching gears like that to say, hey, we need these things that we never even thought about before.
Oh yeah, we were
It's
very
just-
able to be very. I know that word pivot became sort of a buzzword during the time, but
It was the
you had
truth.
to figure it out on the fly. It was a lot of pivoting. It was a lot of people adjusting how they do what they do. I really think it transformed the way we do business and the way we provide
Yeah.
services in this country.
And I think you said also a lot of that, it cemented relationships.
It did.
And it did. I mean, persevering through difficult times that's an intimate thing to go through together. And I agree with you on that. I think it certainly strengthened some relationships for sure.
And we worked with our, radio stations and others in the community, our social media, to get the word out to people. Like, here's where you go. We talked.
We're still open.
We're still here, and there was just a lot of trying to get information to people in a way that was safe for them and safe for our teams, but still provide services and much needed support, because it was really pretty telling. And right prior to COVID, we also had a couple of large apartment buildings that went down for different reasons, and so we had a lot of families leading into that crisis that we were still trying to manage and support and deal with. And let's not forget, a lot of people had pets, right? So we had people who, just like their families, like I have pets, I'm sure you guys do as well. Again, you don't want to be separated from the things that you love and the things that you support. And so we were like, we got to figure that out. And so we reached out to our Humane Society. We reached out to others to say, what do we do? We had some dollars from PetSmart Charities Foundation that funded us to help to provide food, to provide shelter. We had to pay extra to hotels and motels to house pets. But we don't want to separate people from that. So that's a piece that sometimes folks will stay on the street before they will leave a pet, like a loved family member. And so we get that. And so we had to figure out ways to house, cats and dogs and ferrets and a snake in one instance. So, things that are important to people, because we don't want to put any more trauma on folks who are already going through that.
That's dope, man. That's really great work, man. And I know you spoke about it earlier a bit, but what does homelessness look like in Beaver County?
Well, it's different. You don't see a lot of, although we see some of it, you don't see a lot of folks sort of wandering the streets or under bridges, although we do have encampments. We do have some of that where our outreach workers and Dina are out there on the riverbanks and under bridges and et cetera. But a lot of it is folks who are doubled up. So if you are living in a unit and it's leased to you, and you have others who are struggling in there, so you're jeopardizing yourself as well as others, and that is really what we see a lot of.
A lot of that, yep.
Unfortunately, the funky spot that puts you in is then you're not meeting that definition we just talked about. You're doubled up, which doesn't meet HUD's definition, so then we have to be sort of creative in figuring out how to address that. But we do see folks in abandoned sites. We do see a lot of that, and that gave birth to our outreach worker position that we have here. We have a gentleman, Eric, who's out on the streets and with others in the community. If we get a call or we hear that someone is out there, we'll go out and try to touch base with them. Dina, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the point in time survey. So once a year, we do basically like a sweep of the county. There's a sheltered count and also an unsheltered count. The sheltered count are those people who are in the homeless program. So they're in an apartment, but they're still in a homeless program. That's easy because we have a database that everybody gets entered in when they go into a program. So to do that count, we just pull data out of that database, and we have a good count there. For the unsheltered part, we work with partners all through the county. Police help us, case managers who are out and about help us, but we send teams out throughout the county to look for people who are unsheltered. It's a 24-hour snapshot, and when we send all these volunteers out into the community, when we did it this past January, we sent the volunteers out. It was a little bit scaled back, though, because of COVID, but we found 7 people. Mm-hmm. I think that was 3 households, but 7 people. And so what that tells me is on a day when we send volunteers all over the county, we find 7 people. There's at least 7 people
We didn't find.
every day. Or what about the ones we didn't find? It's hard in some of the more rural areas, I'm sure people are staying in places that we're not looking in everybody's shed or everybody's barn or in every inch of the forest, right? So I'm sure that there's more people out there. We know they're out there. And that's why we had the vision we needed a dedicated outreach worker so that at least he can do some sweeps of the areas where we know people do tend to stay. And because if you don't look for them, you're probably not going to see them. Beaver County isn't like a big city where there are, these huge encampments. We do have some people who will camp along the rivers particularly. So we know to check those spots, and we find people there sometimes, not all the time. But we don't have that. It's not as visual as it is in other places. And in that regard, it makes it harder because you really have to make that effort to get out there and look. You have to have the knowledge of where people have a tendency to stay. But most importantly, it's raising that awareness so that people in the community are kind of always looking, right? So if we have more eyes out there looking, then we're more likely to find those folks. And so that's something that we're always working on, just trying to raise awareness to say, hey, if you're not sure, if you think someone might be homeless, call us. The outreach worker can go and check it out.
And that data is super important. We also have housed here at the Cornerstone what's called HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System, where all of the providers in the continuum of care are providing data for all of the people that they're touching, whether it's just providing a one-time support or if it's providing more ongoing support. I'm sorry, I'm losing my head here. I have to mess up the hair. Anyway, with that said, and so we're entering data into those systems, and so we have a very good picture as we're telling the story. I mean, Beaver County's unique, right? We've got sort of little cities or environments like Beaver Falls, Aliquippa, Ambridge, et cetera, New Brighton. But then we have rural areas, right? Farmland, right. Oakstown, Shippingport, Raccoon Township, other places.
Those areas are tough.
Yeah, they're tough to get out there to. So we do a lot of talking to businesses and individuals, just saying, hey, if you're seeing something and you have a question, just let us know. We'll come out and check it out. Also, one other thing is that we know that crisis doesn't happen Monday through Friday from 9 to 4. It happens at night. It happens on the weekends. And so we do have, thankfully, an on-call homeless hotline that people can call after hours, holidays, weekends, et cetera, where an on-call staff member from the Cornerstone will answer. And we have our partners across behavioral health and others that we can reach out to when there are challenges, and we will answer that call 24/7.
So for that program, the outreach program where people are going out and looking, Is that the phone number that, say, if someone's sleeping in the back of my barn, is that the number that they would call so they wouldn't call the police? Like they would call that number?
It depends
Or who
on
would
the
they
nature
call?
of the situation. So
They
if
would
you,
either call the Cornerstone
Cornerstone,
during
correct.
business hours or the homeless hotline after hours. And then if outreach is needed, it would be coordinated from there, correct?
Correct. So if you call the Cornerstone, and we can give those numbers before we end our conversation today, you'll hear on our message after hours, it'll give you the on-call number as well so that you can reach the homeless hotline. But we'll provide those numbers. And we also get a lot of referrals through our website. There's a referral form on there, and I get those 24/7 through my email. And so when I see that referral come through, or a person seeking assistance, or Facebook, we get messaged on Facebook a lot as well, then I'll let my on-call staff know and they'll reach out.
Okay. So once the on-call staff's called, what happens at that point? Would that person that's sleeping in the back of the barn, is it possible that they could find some kind of shelter that night?
Yes.
Or at that point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's the goal, right? We want to get them into hotel, motel, out-of-county shelter. It depends on what's going on and what's available at that time. But that's the point of that, is to be able to go there and assist them and get them out of the barn or out of the inclement weather or wherever they are into a safe environment.
If there's a sort of typical way that things go, a person presents as homeless or we encounter someone who's homeless, the very first thing is addressing those immediate needs. So we got to get you somewhere safe tonight. We need to get something for you to eat. Do you need a coat, right? Like those really basic needs. So, and I can say just shy of 100% of every time we'll get someone somewhere that night, right? There are those rare occasions where, and in those rare occasions, it's usually because the person doesn't they don't want those options that we have. But we almost 100% of the time get people in shelter that night. And then the next step is follow up with coordinated entry, and let's get you screened and see where you're going to go next and start with all those other referrals to help.
We're going to address the immediate emergency, and oftentimes we're on the phone with chiefs of police or police officers or staff from the hospital or whatever that may look like. And we've had to be creative every now and then to support someone through the night, depending upon their circumstance. And then we're going to tie them into the mainstream systems and get them stabilized. But the initial thing is to address the initial emergency, just like going to the ER. We're going to stabilize you, get you everything that you need, and tie you into the main systems as soon as we can, whether it be the next day or the following Monday or whatever that looks like.
Okay. Now, I know we discussed, kind of what it looks like, what COVID's done. I kind of want to go into, what the community could be doing, or what are some of the biggest challenges that are leading to it. I know when we were on the phone, we talked about housing, disability, mental health. What are some of these big challenges, and what are some things that, everybody can rally together and do?
I would say one of the biggest challenges is the lack of affordable housing in the county. The pandemic has certainly, really revealed how much of an issue that is. Again, as people are staying housed because of before the eviction moratorium, and now because there's a lot of rental assistance funds in the county to help people get caught up on their rent, so it's keeping them housed. That's all great, but there's not enough affordable housing now for the people who are coming through coordinated entry. The Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania monitors this, and from between 2018 and 2021, there was a reduction of 17 affordable housing units per 100 extremely low income people. So there were 73 available units for every 100 extremely low income folks, and then in 2021 it was 54, I think. None of that is shocking. We knew that when the skilled workers for the Shell plant came into the county that rents would probably go up, and we don't blame landlords for doing that. They have to support themselves as well, and so if they have the opportunity to get a little bit more money for a unit, we understand that, but it certainly put a pinch on things. Then you add the layer of the pandemic on top of it, and people weren't moving. It's become painfully apparent that we definitely have an affordable housing problem. That length of time between when someone goes through coordinated entry until they get into that apartment, it has increased significantly. I don't have the data in front of me, but we can get that. But it's taking much longer for people to get housed now. which, if they're in a hotel, right, it snowballs all that money to keep them in that hotel for a very long time. And then, while they wait for the apartment. And we're bound by fair market rents or rent reasonableness, which is, you just have to say, that you have to be able to demonstrate that this is the going rent. So different programs have different rules. Most of them are fair market rent. That's really low. And we're having a really hard time finding enough units for folks.
Right, and we have our a fair housing officer here as well, and he does the housing inspections to make sure, and he's determining, fair market rent for particular programs, et cetera. But as Dina said, that's probably one of the biggest challenges, not only in Beaver County, but across the country, the inventory and availability. Our partners at the Housing Authority of Beaver County are tremendous. They're an incredible support. They're very important partners. Our private landlords are super important partners as well. A lot of them lost their units through all of this, right? There were eviction moratoriums. They weren't able to receive rent until dollars started coming in. So we lost some of those private partners, and they're crucial to this process, right? We need them as much as sometimes they need us, and so we're trying to support them and educate them and make sure that they're staying alive and well out there as well. But rents are a challenge, and then it's awareness. As we see individuals with challenges, it's about destigmatizing. Homelessness looks like a lot of things. When people hear that word, they conjure up, I think, some images that you might see in major cities and things. But you would be surprised the individuals who find themselves in a housing crisis, women with children, elderly folks, veterans. It's not all. There are many things and complex situations that lead someone to this door. And so a big message I want to send is be open-minded about what that looks like and recognize it could be any of us. I mean, we're one health crisis away, we're one job loss away, lots of things happened. A lot of families lost loved ones during COVID. A lot of undiagnosed health issues went on. People are seeing crisis and mental health and depression at rates that are somewhat alarming through all of this. And so lots of things can happen in our lives that can turn your life around on a dime.
Right.
And so I think the most important thing I try to talk to people about is it could be anybody. It could be your family, but don't be ashamed of that. I mean, we all can use a hand up sometimes, and so don't be afraid to ask for help. But that's one of the issues, is helping to destigmatize that and understand that we're sort of all in this together, and to have a healthy community, it has to be healthy for all of us. It has to have supports and services for those in need. It has to have home ownership opportunities and rental opportunities for all. And so we appreciate the opportunity to be at the table, not only with our partners in meetings like we've been discussing, but in opportunities like this where we can get the word out to people that says we want this community to be healthy for all. And the good news is that others in leadership and others in our community want that as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest stigmas is people tend to believe that someone who's homeless just was, wanted to party, wanted drinking alcohol. They just made some decisions that got them there, and they need to just make better decisions. I think that's one of the biggest stigmas that I see. And there's also a sense of, okay, well, that's not me, so I don't have to worry about it. But people really don't understand how much homelessness can actually cost you as a taxpayer.
Oh, for sure.
If you're a selfish individual and this is the only thing that gets through to you, you have to understand that you can get sick while being on the street. Then, they got to go to the hospital or picked up by the police, or jail. These are all tax dollars.
That's right.
So one way or another, homelessness does affect everyone.
That's right. And having a healthy community means a place where everybody can feel welcome and we can thrive together. And so just as you said, I mean, there are costs to not providing these supports and not giving assistance. And as I mentioned, when you see elderly, we had a woman in here, I can still recall her face. She was 82 years old. And had a falling out with a family, with a child, and was on the street, had never thought she would encounter anything like that. She had been at the Women's Center, and we were working together to support her. I mean, I think when you say homelessness, nobody thinks of that, right? Or, children, men who are, they're trying to work. I mean, work was an issue, but imagine if you're trying to get a job and you don't have an address, you don't have clothes, you don't have a telephone. I mean, it's a cycle, right? It just snowballs. And so you think it's hard to get to that spot. It's really not that hard. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I tell that story because had I not been employed and had a family around me, I went through 13 months of treatment, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That can wipe a family out. One health crisis can wipe a family out. And as we saw through COVID, loss, people passing away from COVID and other complications, the breadwinner in the family, it really put some folks who never probably thought that could happen, it put them in that position. And so, the one thing that we should remember is it could always be us. It could be a loved one. It could be a family member. And when that time comes, we're here for you.
All right. So what is something community members could do besides removing their stigmas? What are some things that people could do to help?
Well, I'm gonna be honest. We're building a shelter. It takes a lot of resources, financial and otherwise. You can volunteer. You can donate. You can donate dollars. You can donate items. You can donate your time.
Yeah.
Dina, I know we need volunteers.
Yeah, when we do our point-in-time survey, we always need volunteers, folks, not just even to go out and do outreach, but when we do outreach, we put together bags of hygiene items, socks, gloves, some food, non-perishable food items, things like that. We need help gathering those items. We need help boxing those items, bagging them rather. So we always need help with that. I think a big thing that people can do, though, if they care about homelessness, to talk with people about that and to help spread the word. Like, there are services to help, not just to get over your stigma, but be an ambassador for the services that are out there to help people access those. I think that it's easy to make assumptions, and I would ask folks, if you feel compassion for people who have found themselves homeless, like, have those hard conversations with your neighbors and friends and family, and try to put a face to it. If they find that folks are saying, "Oh, we don't care about those homeless people," have those hard conversations. Be that ambassador. I think that can go a long way too.
Right, and get involved. I mean, be a part of, learning about what's going on. And people think, well, we talk about some of the obvious sort of assistance that we need as far as volunteers are concerned, but we also found we needed help with technical assistance, people who knew social media and things like that. When you think of interns, I get a lot of human service, which I appreciate. But we're a little bit technically, I know I am, technically challenged. We have our Facebook page and our other social media and things like that. Things like the vehicles and the mechanisms like podcasting and other ways to get out. So if you have that sort of expertise, you never know what could be utilized. There are nonprofits who need board members. They need, we're hiring, we need staff members. There's just a lot of ways to get involved and be a part of community right now. And there's, I think, a great willingness and a desire to come together and be a part of community.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing I was telling her earlier, I don't know if you guys have anybody in the office who would be interested, but I work with the Genesis Collective, who you guys know.
Yeah, sure do.
And we have a lending library where we have equipment, cameras, laptops. So if there was anybody here, if you guys once a month wanted to put together TikToks or just videos.
What? No, I'm just kidding.
I told him, I said, Marie will be so excited about that.
I am. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, you could put small documentaries, just videos interviewing people.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Just being able to put out information and content. We show people how to use the stuff. You can borrow it.
Okay.
All of that. It's there for organizations and community members to use. Number two, we're starting a media institute where we're showing people how to tell these stories,
right,
and how to get these messages out. So if there's anybody here who would be interested, we would work.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of videos, particularly as we've been on our journey through the development of the shelter, which is in Vanport. I always want to give a shout out to our friends, the Vanport Township Commissioners, and the Beaver County Commissioners, but the folks in Vanport who we purchased the old drug and alcohol building in Vanport, and we are currently rehabbing a 20-bed 24-hour men's shelter that will have all kinds of services coming out of it, not only the immediate need of emergency shelter for 20 men on any given night. It's about 7,300 nights of shelter through the year. But it'll have educational opportunities. It'll have physical and mental health supports. It has space for other agencies to come in and work with their clients. It will have our staff working there. It will have job training and other opportunities, transportation. We've worked very close with the executive director of Beaver County Transit Authority, Mary Jo Morandini, to reinstate bus transportation to that area. And so it really, again, has taken a lot of partners to make this happen. And we anticipate a November of 2022 opening. So we ask that you stay in tune for that and keep an eye out. And if you know folks, know that that is coming. In the meantime, we're continuing to work with our out-of-county partners, our Women's Center and Shelter, along with our hotels and motels in the community. And we have another program called BC On Call, where we lease 2 apartments from the Housing Authority of the County of Beaver for individuals who may not be appropriate for shelter, may not be appropriate for hotel. They may have children, families, etc. They may have other types of challenges that that environment may not be ideal for them. So we have to look at other ways to meet the needs of those individuals.
Okay.
Another thing that folks might be able to do, are you going to be looking for people to donate meals?
We are. Oh,
Yeah.
man. So we'll be hiring. That's another thing to keep an eye out for, because that's, we know we will be hiring in the fall. We'll be hiring a part-time volunteer coordinator to help our volunteers have a meaningful experience. But one of the things that we'll be working on, the men will do breakfast at the shelter. Lunch, we're working with BCRC in our community. And then for dinner, similar, exactly how the former Crossroads did it, they had a great model where they worked with the community, faith-based organizations, businesses, and other private individuals to coordinate meals, where they would prepare meals and bring them in for the gentlemen in the shelter. We will be doing that again. So we will be looking for meals every night of the week in the fall. So if you're interested and you cook, we would love to hear from you. And so we'll be putting a lot of that information out as well. It's, we really want to make the men's shelter a beacon in this community, not a burden. And we also want it to be a resource to everybody, not only the 20 men at any given point in time who will be in that facility. We're looking to work with Community College of Beaver County to have a community classroom space there where folks from outside can come and take non-credit and other types of classes in that site, right? They don't have to have anything to do with the shelter. There will be a location there that we're working to finalize. But there will also be opportunity for the men in the shelter to take different classes and things as well. And even once people leave the program, they will still be able to get support and have resources. So again, we're looking at that site to do what it's there to do, obviously, is to shelter homeless men in our community, but also to be a resource and a support to Beaver County in general.
I love it. Is there anything else you guys want to plug or point out before we head out?
Just asking folks to be eyes and ears out in the community and to refer folks if they think that they're having a housing issue. I would encourage people to not be worried about, do they meet the definition, the HUD definition of homelessness? Just call and we'll get it sorted out and point folks in the right direction. But to just be those eyes and ears for us out there, because we can't be everywhere all the time.
And reach out. So let me give you a little bit of information. So the Cornerstone of Beaver County is located here. Our headquarters is at 600 6th Street here in Beaver Falls. You can reach us at 724-846-6400. That phone is answered Monday through Friday from 9 to 4. After hours, it's 724-494-0726, which is our on-call number. Then you can hit us up on our website, www.cornerstonebeaver.org. As I mentioned, there's a number of resources there. You can also make a referral to the agency as well. And you can find us on Facebook at the Cornerstone, TCBC, the Cornerstone of Beaver County. I also want to plug that there are a number of other websites. The Systems of Care, Behavioral Health Systems of Care through BCBH has a wonderful website. BC Can, which is another organization in the community, has a wonderful website. A lot of the events that are happening in the community, a lot of the supports that are out there are listed on those sites. So there's a number of places that you can take a peek and link up to other supports and services. I don't know if there's any others, Dina.
The BC Can website also holds copies of all of the minutes from our monthly partner meeting. So if folks want to read up on that, you can go to it's bccan.org is the website, and those minutes are posted there. But folks are also welcome to come to the meeting. We meet the second Thursday of every month at 1:30 Currently, we are meeting in the CYS conference room in Beaver Falls, but we also will provide a Zoom option for folks too. So the best way to reach me is, well, probably my email, but it's complicated. So can we maybe just add it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's completely fine. That's completely fine.
Or you can always reach out to the Cornerstone.
Yes,
We keep
they can
we
get
keep
in
close
touch with
tabs on Dina. She stays pretty close to the Cornerstone
I
of
do.
Beaver County. And, all of the other sort of supports and services. If you have a question, don't hesitate to call. I tell folks that all the time. We get calls for, I need a roofer or a plumber, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, let me figure that one out for you. So if we don't know the answer, we'll try to help you find the answer. We'll try to get you directed to where you need to be, but, reach out, give us a call.
Okay. I'm really honored to, sit down and interview you guys. Ever since talking with you the first time, I've learned a lot. I've learned that anybody could be one step away from, having some type of crisis or being in this position. And I encourage other people to not be prideful. Just reach out to see if you might qualify for some type of assistance. It doesn't have to get extremely bad. If you know someone who's in a position, reach out, and see how you could be helped, so.
Well, Seth, I appreciate you involving Dina and I, and
Yes.
and the work with the Genesis Collective and all of the other entities in the county that are trying to get this story out. But again, don't suffer in silence. Really, don't do that. Don't feel embarrassed. Please don't feel that way. You come here, you're gonna be welcomed with open arms. And I need to mention also that we serve as a warming and cooling center as well. In the winter, we're a warming center. In the heat of the summer, we're a cooling center. You can come in, cool off. You do not have to be homeless if you don't have air conditioning, whatever. We have water, coffee, snacks, and other supports that you can learn about. Not just the supports of the Cornerstone, but other supports, job opportunities, training. A lot of those websites offer trainings for families and individuals as well as professionals. So take a look at those resources because they're very good resources, and they'll link you up to other connectivities and other supports in the community.
One other thing I wanted to say when you said the warming centers, there's also free community meals every day of the week in Beaver County in various locations. That schedule can also be found on the BC Can website. Do you have it on yours too?
We do.
Yeah. So all that information is there, locations, days, times, and all of that. So if anyone is in need of a meal, you can get one
Every day in the county.
every day in the county.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys. And
Yes, thank you
Thanks,
so much
Seth.
for having us.
problem. It's been brought to you by Bank, Community Development Partnership, and Witty Media.